Industry regulator Ofgem announced the largest ever hike in energy bills in the energy cap for this October by upping it by 80% last month. Not only that, but they recently changed the way the price cap works, meaning it will now change every 3 months as opposed to every 6, meaning we could face yet another rise in January unless the incoming Prime Minister freezes energy prices. People up and down the country have been affected by the rising cost of energy, and in Hillsborough, Adam's no different.
So we moved in December 2020, and from what we were paying then to what we're paying now, it's already doubled. And then obviously the forecast isn't great, that it's going to go even higher and higher. So if it's tripled in January from what we started, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm really relieved that I started this job because my pay is probably like bailing me out at the minute. But I have had to make some sacrifices. So I've had to sell a lot of I collect various items. I've had to sell a lot of that just to help put this money to one side to help us, and it's just like making little changes rather than using the dryer behind me. I've now installed the washing pole outside, and we just put it on the clothesline. And with the government, with this £400 payment, all right, that is going to help in the short term, but it's kind of putting a plaster on a broken leg. Like, you're still going to have the broken leg. We're still going to have this issue going down the line. It's a temporary fix. It's not a permanent solution.
Adam has similar experiences to many others across Britain who didn't particularly struggle with energy bills a year or so ago, but are now seeing themselves having to tighten up their purse strings. But what are some of the biggest savers that you can do to cut back on your energy use? Some of the biggest spenders are central heating, with 6 hours of it costing almost £10, which is over 3 times higher than it was last winter. So putting on a jumper at home and wrapping up warm can help save you some cash. Just an hour of using a plug-in heater costs you a pretty penny too, so try and avoid them if you can. Even an hour of using the oven or the hob adds up. The tumble dryer is also a big spender, with just an hour and a half costing almost £2. Hanging your clothes up to dry might be the way to go. But what can you do if you were already doing all of these things just to get by before the rising cost of energy? National Energy Action is a national fuel poverty charity that offers people in fuel poverty help and support. They told me they've seen a steep increase in people getting in touch and that they've never been needed more than now.
We have worked through the numbers, and National Energy Action predicts that 8.5 million UK households will be fuel poor come October. So that's 1 in 3, which is absolutely unprecedented. The government has done some help. So earlier this year, they announced a £150 council tax rebate. Unfortunately, most of that is swallowed up by council tax rises. And a lot of the people we help aren't eligible for council tax anyway. So they have had difficulty accessing that money in the first place.
Now, the council tax rebate scheme that Anna's talking about was announced back in February and allows households in England to claim £150 to help with the cost of living crisis. According to the government website, around 20 million households are eligible for this repayment. That's 4 in every 5. And in July, the government also announced it will be giving households a £400 discount on energy bills this winter. But this is to be spread out over 6 months starting from October. So that's £66 a month. But with the average energy bill soaring up to £295 for UK households next month, will this money really help to cushion the blow? Whilst tips and tricks on energy saving can help save you some money in the short term, what are long-term solutions to these problems? I'm off to speak with an architect that specialises in sustainability to see what she thinks.
Surely going towards future, any new building should have a lot of thoughts and solutions for dealing with the climate. We are going to face harsher climate, so of course the buildings should be adapted for them, and that should happen when they are being designed. And it would be a shame for new buildings not to have considered that.
Somewhere that's put both sustainability and energy efficiency at its forefront is Situ, and I'm off to speak to their CEO to hear about their latest project in Leeds.
The Climate Innovation District is our second strategic project from the one we did over in Sheffield, Little Kelham, that we've now developed upon. I think the significant difference to what we're doing here at the Climate Innovation District is we're delivering about 1,000 homes.
So what makes this estate different from other new builds?
We design houses that retain their heat. We design houses that maximise solar gain and perform as best they can in the different seasons. When people are showering, when they're cooking, when their laptops are all on, that heat is then stored and then redistributed across the house at the right time. So Between those two things, they're incredibly efficient in terms of the demand, and as long as the world doesn't continue to go completely bonkers, they're also incredibly cheap to run. We often get asked the question, is a triple glazed window more expensive than a double glazed? And the response is that this is an industry-wide challenge that we face, that means that we have to change the system from the first sketches on a piece of paper all the way through the delivery model. That's how we're going to get fundamental change. It's not about changing one aspect of that jigsaw, it's about changing the whole thing. Actually, we can live sustainably at scale, and we can change the way in which we live. The change that we need to create as humanity is significant. It has to be bold, it has to rip up the rule books, it has to make new rules and challenge the status quo.
Whilst companies like Situ can help pave the way for new homes to be built to be energy efficient, most of Britain's homes have already been built. So what do we do about those? I'm at a home in Westminster that's been retrofitted by the council, but what actually is retrofitting? It's when you take an existing home and add new features or technology to make sure it's more energy efficient. Basically, the hope is that it will save you money in the long term. Now, to make this home more energy efficient, they've installed double glazed windows throughout the property. They've also insulated all external walls of the home, as well as including underfloor insulation to stop any heat escaping the property. Now, this big piece of kit behind me is an air source heat pump, and it's about 400 times more energy efficient than a standard boiler you'd expect to find in a traditional home. So if retrofitting is a good way to save on energy costs, then why aren't more people doing it?
Generally, when you touch upon the building, it's going to cost. And cost is probably one of the main issues that perhaps the British government could help support improving the buildings. So in architecture, we always say that the building fabric goes first, and then you can add technologies. For example, if you have a hole in the wall, no matter what technology you use to, add heating or cooling or whatever, all the energy is going to go out of that hole in the wall.
But with the rising cost of living and a perceived lack of support from the government to help people to retrofit their homes, what other solutions are there? I'm off to speak with Lindy from Friends of the Earth to get her insight.
So nationally, the organisation has for a long time been taking issue with the government on the lack of support for renewable energy, and it makes no sense whatsoever that it has not been supported in the way that it needs to be. So there are massive subsidies that still go to the fossil fuel industries, the oil and gas industries. Were the money that's being invested there being invested in renewables, it would be an entirely different game. There are lots of ways in which you can generate electricity renewably. So wind farms or wind turbines, which are becoming enormously efficient now and are by far the cheapest way of generating electricity, but also solar panels, solar farms. I hope enough people can put two and two together that their increased prices now are linked to ways in which we could to save the planet too. So it's a bit of a win-win-win actually.
If you have an old kettle that takes ages to boil, it may cost you £20 to replace it. But if you get a new one, you'll save £10 a year for every year on your £10 a year every year on your electricity bill.
With Boris Johnson not coming up with an adequate solution to the energy crisis and people left not knowing where to turn, it'll be down to the next leader, whoever they may be, to put people's minds and bank balances at ease.